All right, I'm going to apologize in advance for the quote unquote crappier camera and audio quality. I was going to do this off of my uh, phone's streaming service, not streaming service, but the YouTube app on my phone. But I changed my mind because I was involved in a conversation, a phone call that was about half an hour long, and it drained my battery. And I just didn't think I had enough of my battery charge to do, 30, 50 hour long stream. So you'll bear with me. I'm sure tomorrow's stream will look better, but that's the reason for why this thing is the way it is. So I'd like to apologize for those who were hoping I would keep up the terrific camera quality. Yeah, it's been a really aggravating period because I was actually up until 5 this morning, and then I fell asleep, and I woke up and it was around, I think, what, 12 or 1 when I got up. So that's why this is a little bit later than usual. See what there's here. I was looking at the fact that Brazil was actually a Fox News contributor now, and I think I'd heard of that once or twice before, but it's just the idea that they're supposedly so anti-Democrat, and then they have a Democrat as one of their contributors, and not even just any old, commentator or person of no interest. Someone that was that high up the food chain of the DNC, you decided to appoint. Yeah, there's a lot of little noise in the background, as I've mentioned before. Okay, so we had a Connecticut nightclub shooting. I'm gonna post the link to that article in the chat. Oh, see the details. One person was killed in a Connecticut nightclub shooting early Sunday morning, and 4 others were injured, police in Hartford said. A 28-year-old male was fatally shot, authorities tweeted. Another man and a woman were in surgery, and 2 other victims were in stable condition. The shooting occurred at South End nightclub, according to police. So that's today's murder. I'm sure somebody else will get killed between the end of today and the start of tomorrow. Because this is, I'm trying to think of a way to merge the word gun in America. Just the amount of firearms we have is really insane. Also, I should mention just a little bit about that phone call. As I said before, it was 30 minutes, drained a whole bunch of my battery, but it was with a person who kind of has trouble hearing. And uh, I don't know if it's just the fact that I did the excrement employers video not even a week ago, but they were talking about you can't just sit around and you have to make it appear as though you're doing. And I thought to myself, it really is the signs of the Twilight Zone when you can have a man who literally can show with receipts over almost 30 applications in less than 2 months, and then a couple of days after they put all of that together, just like as proof of they're that well, is to then say, you need to go out and apply. You need to go out and it's like, there's just this great sense of irony that accompanies that because I can't tell them it as good as I can show them. See, if I put all of these, if I were to, let's say, play that video for them, they still might not even be able to hear it because of their hearing. But to actually show them, here's 8 of them stacked on top of each other in my email, it's really ironic that they could sit there and still say that to me. And I don't think they would, but they would do the whole little "don't give up, don't give up." You know, lying if I said I'm gonna pretend my basic pattern recognition skills haven't come into play due to this. Because, like I said, there's just a certain point with a lot of this stuff where if it keeps happening over and over again, you can reasonably conclude it's not going to change. But hey, that's how they roll. They like to know, believe stuff because it's a lot easier to think something than it is to be shown that it's not true. I might change the name of this stream because I don't think we're gonna get that many people. I mean, we got one other person apparently watching this besides myself, so let me switch it. Instead of Sunday news, we'll call this Sunday phone call news and hijinks. Yeah, they're just such a strange group of people. I mean, I just wish when you tell someone something, they actually would listen instead of trying to shell out more advice. Because when I have conversations with individuals that I claim to be on the side of, usually if they say something and can prove it, I mean, and even with that, if they just tell me it or relate some experience, I'm a lot more likely to just kind of go to their side because it's someone that I like. Um, so, for example, if I were to be told by someone that they've applied dozens of times and they actually can show that they have, my whole little thing of just keep on trying and eventually that's going to go out the window. But it's not going to go out the window because I suddenly magically become negative. It's because they're showing me proof of something of their position. Because, like I said, a lot of the people who are going around and doing the whole keep trying thing are not actually attempting to do it themselves, meaning that they're not putting up with the same system of going out and applying to 10 places at once, and then 3 weeks go by and you hear nothing from them, and then in the meantime you apply somewhere else and you hear nothing from them, or if you do, they're like, thanks but no thanks. Man, I'm telling you, I never would have thought I'd see the day where just applying to places that aren't even. I mean, people who actually saw the video know what places I applied to. That you would actually have this like weird thing on the part of these places where they try to make themselves seem like they're so prestigious and you need to have all this experience, and it's so weird. So I said I live in the Twilight Zone. And this stuff just is not normal. And I had one person who actually tried to claim that I should look to the online stuff in an official capacity. I actually tried that back in, I think it was September, October, where I was on this website and I would draw all this stuff out, and people would react positively to it. And I mentioned before that a lot of times it seems like on the internet there's these cliques that have people who basically run them in the sense that you have a couple of people who are at the top and anyone else that's trying to get up there just kind of sits at the bottom. So like I would ask people, because they call it commissions, where you would draw something for someone in exchange for currency. And usually there wouldn't be anyone asking ever. But then when you go on some person's page with a million, or I don't know, 100,000 views, they're talking about how upset they are that they can't get to everything, and they have to publicly say, I'm not taking anymore because there's too many. And I was just like, that's the Twilight Zone nature of this, where you get, in your head, this feeling of maybe there's just not enough people to support this. It's like, no, they're around. They just are going to the same, harassing the same 5 or 6 people to do it. I just thought that was really funny. I remember one time I was on this guy's page, and he had said that he was done with commissions, and there was somebody that came in the comment section like, "You're a jerk because you won't let me pay you to draw something for me." Like he was the end all be all of people that could illustrate stuff. It was really amusing, because I've said before that I don't think I have some unique talent that is so different from anyone else that you couldn't get it from somewhere else. So to actually see someone acting as if that's the case with that one person was really comical. I wanted you to draw this for me, and you said you're never going to do commissions again, so you're a jerk. It's not like there's 50 other people on this website that could do the exact same thing. I mean, like, and sometimes when you do that stuff, you get burnt out. Because with me, I had basically set a mission where I was going to try to draw at least one different image each day, and I just got tired of it. And actually, a lot of the people who do that stuff will sometimes take breaks because they just get sick of it. It's just this burnout that you get from doing something, over and over and over again. And you got to understand that when they get the burnout, it's even worse because they actually rely on that stuff to finance themselves. So with me, I basically said, if I'm going to draw something and not get paid, I'm going to draw what I actually want to draw instead of what I think will get me noticed by these pricks that are basically harassing the same couple of people every few weeks. Yeah, I'm bringing it up because I do listen to, or rather read comments, and that was that person said getting a niche or whatever. That's what that reminded me of. It's a nice idea, but I never had any delusions that the online stuff would actually. How do I explain it? I've never sat back and thought, just because I've seen this happen on a lot of channels where uh, I ever believed that I would do something to where it would get a whole bunch of views continuously. Like you'll have occasionally one video that gets maybe 100 or 100 plus, but usually outside of that, I'm going to get my same 10, 20, 30. And again, that's not me being negative. That's just me looking at a pattern of years of investment on the site and kind of noticing that's where it's intending to be. And unfortunately, when you talk about, I guess, not liking that position because people do want to believe that their stuff is going to grow and get more attention just because of how long they do it, you have these people online who have this weird thing of just trying to attack someone for that stated position. Like I remember I did a video where it was like, oh, 2,000 subs, but I don't even get anywhere near those views. And this guy was like, "You're so negative. No wonder you don't have a woman." And I'm like, you know, I'm sorry, but unless you're putting your videos on unlisted or private, people make content for others to watch. So the more views it has, usually, unless it's what's that one song? There's a song on Vivo that has a bunch of downvotes that came out like 7 or 8 years ago. Oh, Friday, that's what it was called. Unless it's something like that, usually the more views people have, the more satisfied they are with what they made because they know that people saw it and apparently liked it enough to either share it or watch it a second time or a third time or something like that. But I told you that there's a lot of weird standards that people get held to online. Just that phone call was so aggravating. Like I was, and I really do like that person, but it's just them sitting there and acting as though I'm just this person who, has not made any attempts or whatever after not even a week after I posted the video that showed that that was anything but the case. I'm just like, are you kidding me? We're really doing this? You're actually gonna, sit here and try to motivate me to do something I'm already doing? So it's all part of a little obnoxious pattern of basically telling people that there's a certain amount of control that I can't have over these things because it's two or three people that influence it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals that seem to forget that because it's easier to blame the person versus the system. Like that one guy that did the video where he announced he was quitting YouTube and he had 400,000 views. And everyone in the comment section like, I've never heard of you before. And then if you look at all the rest of his stuff, it's like 1,000, 2,000. And I didn't write a comment, but that they were literally reading my mind because I had never seen him in my recommended prior to him saying that he was done. So that was a nice little side story. We have over 1,000 former Justice Department officials calling for Barr to resign. He's not going to get out of there. And then Buddha Trash is defending these big dollar fundraisers. He says he's following the same practices as Obama, which I don't know how the hell that's like literally almost stamped into your head. I am going to be just as much a tool for these for let's see insurance companies, defense contractors, the whole nine yards as the president before this current one. Like that's literally an anti-defense. I don't know what propelled him to even think that would make sense. But he actually has said some stupid stuff like he'll admit that the system is corrupt, but then he wants to basically still act in the same way of the system. So it's kind of like a self-made hypocrite or one that's aware that they're hypocritical because he'll say that the big donors are something that needs to go away, but that he's not going to stop using them because this is how people have funded their campaigns in the past. Even though, if you're actually a popular politician like Sanders, you can get donations from regular individuals and not have to be a little whore for funding, which is exactly what Buddha Trash and the rest of the Democrats who do that are. But they let him get away with it. 100,000 votes currently for that maniac, and I'm sure by the time the primary's over, it's going to be maybe I don't know 1,000,000, 2,000,000, 3,000,000. And I guess what gets me is that even though Yang wasn't my top candidate or my big choice or whatever, if he had 100,000 votes this early or 1,000,000 votes or just anywhere, any number that's past a couple thousand, I wouldn't look at people like they were crazy, even if I didn't think he was the person that should be the nominee or is most like basically I'm saying that when you look at the candidates, whether it's Yang or Gabbard or Gravel, I can name multiple people who have ran who weren't my top choice that I wouldn't see anything wrong with someone supporting. But it's like, you guys keep talking about how unelectable a socialist is, but then you want to vote for a guy that can't even get the support of one of the Democrats' largest constituents, which are black voters. And you don't see how that's basically it's kind of like if you go up to the Democrats and they would say, we support changing the system. But just like they'll admit that there are more minorities in jail than the largest ethnic group, which is Caucasians. But then they'll support people like Biden and Harris that have a history of locking up minorities and in their respective roles as well. In her case, attorney general. In his case, senator. And it's that same kind of paradox where they claim they support one position, but then they back people who don't support that position. And I could respect it if they at least came clean with it. Like I had said before, that one of the reasons that I'm very transparent with a lot of my stuff is that I just try to look at a politician in full. and ask myself if I agree with them on a majority of things, or if that one thing or two things that I disagree with them on is enough for me to just pronounce my support. So, like with Johnson, when that scandal happened a couple of months ago with that user writing the novel in my comment section or in my chat, I had said, "Look, Vietnam was stupid, but I'm not going to throw away the person that signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and Head Start." I mean, I'm not. There's too much on a domestic scale for me to say that someone should just be cast away. But you go up to these Buddha trash supporters, and I would be willing to bet my entire hand that they can't name probably any of his positions. Uh, and it really sucks because you look at the polling and they say healthcare is their top issue, but he actually has been able to con some people with this Medicare for all who wanted nonsense, where he basically tries to get people to assume that he's offering both Sanders's plan and also some other private insurance cop out. So basically, you're getting the best of both worlds when, in fact, you're at most getting a public option or something that has you have no reason to believe is going to be anywhere near as comprehensive as what Sanders proposed, which is just single payer, and we have that in other countries. But I'm saying that that kind of internalized thinking of what the hell is this person talking about, you don't get from these voters. They just see some polls, they see a little guy in a suit and tie that I guess according to the media looks so handsome or whatever, and then they vote for him. I mean, I go and read that he's an Israel supporter, so supports the Israeli government. And when I'm reading it, all I can think of is just bootlicking for Netanyahu, the continued massacre of Palestinians, and Americans just don't care. They're not interested. Doesn't matter to them as long as they're not getting slaughtered, and they still actually are, by the way, with these different shootings that we have. They couldn't care less. I mentioned Jennifer on Twitter, who was a Yemen ending the Yemen war advocate, and she had Democrats harassing her and writing some of the most antagonistic crap because she said she wouldn't vote for candidates who supported that conflict. I remember one said, "Keep holding out hope for Yemen." This like weird thing of trying to make it seem like it's a pipe dream to have that conflict end anytime soon when it's actually been voted to end by the House and Senate last year and got vetoed by Trump. So if they were able to get, what was it, about 14 more senators to vote for it, it would have passed. Or they would have overridden Trump's veto and it would have went into law. But, these are like, this is why I don't like a lot of these douchebags, because they think that because they have a D or an R next to their name, that automatically makes them a good person. They can talk to someone any kind of way they want. That's why I said Twitter, I got off of there because of what they did to my account. But I think eventually, because what I would do is I would write stuff and I just wouldn't, I turned off the notifications for the responses. So I could see that someone wrote something back, but I wouldn't actually look at what they wrote because it just didn't matter to me. It was not consequential at all, what their response was to it, which is actually a much more, I think I probably should do that on YouTube more. But the thing about YouTube is you have a higher chance of someone that responding to it because of the subscription thing. But it's just when you look at those kind of responses and when you see some of the stuff people write on here, it's just, what's the point of trying to have a civil discourse? I mean, like they were antagonizing these different Democrats or liberals, a person who is supporting keeping people alive. And all these pricks will sit here and celebrate Martin Luther King Day and talk about we love equality and we love humanity. But then you're voting for idiots that continue conflicts that kill thousands each year. And they continue it whether by voting in the House or Senate to continue it, or as president ordering troops to some country you couldn't even find on the map. and no one thinks that's weird. Like I said, a lot of times I look at voters and I feel a just a sense of dread. Because some of the people they prop up and support in large numbers, I can't fathom why anyone would even back other than just complete ignorance. Like even with the Trump stuff, I had said before that he actually has legitimate supporters. And one of the things they try to do is they convince themselves that if they disagree with him on something, it's not that big of a deal. Like I knew one Trump supporter who uh I think it was after he announced he was going to send more troops to Afghanistan. I was like, I thought you were anti-war, and their response was to say that they didn't favor an immediate pullout, which was a departure from what they had said before. But at least with them, they actively tried to convince themselves that this is someone who's worth supporting. With the case of a lot of the different Democrats or whatever in this primary, it's just backing a person just to back someone. I mean, I remember I was looking at that stupid "Never Bernie" hashtag on Twitter, and you had all of these people. They're posting how they support Harris, how they support Booker, how they support Gillibrand, how they support Warren, how they all these clowns, right? And it was so crazy because out of the entire must be 50, 60, 70, whatever the number of people who wrote that hashtag were, I only saw one person who actually came out and said, "You guys are stupid because if you actually don't support Sanders, you won't back candidates who are trying to be like him." And look, this lady was an idiot. She was a person who wants to keep the crappy status quo going. But I had to give her credit because she at least went after him on policy substance. She named about three or four different policies he had that she tried to argue were not as good as what Hillary proposed or whatever. And it was just so shocking how by her existence, right, by just her being one person who wrote something like that, she showed how empty the rest of the group was, the rest of the people that were using that hashtag were. Because you can't support the man's message without still appearing to support him. I mean, let's say in some alternate world, Sanders dropped out and endorsed Harris and she implemented single payer. So not that crap she proposed later, but actual single payer and free school and Green New Deal. It kind of wouldn't really matter to me that he lost the primary, because his vision still came to pass. And the idiots that were, talking about how they wouldn't support him still ended up supporting him via what they allowed to be implemented by the person they voted for. But this is why I said that it seems like the main purpose of politics, which is to address policy substance through people running for office and doing things in office to implement various positions, has basically been overridden by popularity contests and grudge matches and personal remarks. You can look at the was it California's 25th district with the election that Cenk is running in, and you can literally watch all of the interviews he's done with major media, so with CNN and the other clowns, and they never talk about his positions. All they do is whine about some stupid blog post from 20 years ago that he himself renounces, that he himself says he's sorry for, and they think that's actually how you're supposed to run an election. You're supposed to have a candidate who just sits there having to apologize over and over again for something they said 20 years ago. And no one thinks that's weird. No one thinks that's a sign of a broken democracy. No one thinks that's a sign of a media that is purposely trying to dodge a critical eye on these candidates. Remember, this is just a House race. He could possibly not even get that many votes from people not even knowing what's going on because it's a special election for the Katie Hill seat that I mentioned a while back. But yeah, people just don't care. They allow themselves to be tricked and conned and swindled by dumb media. I've actually seen some what do you call it? People who've like taken clips of TYT and they'll be like, "Oh, Jenks said this 2 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever." And it's like I expect people online who are running nameless, faceless accounts on YouTube to do stuff like that. What I don't expect is for the American media to have a political candidate come on their crap and basically ask him the same stupid question over and over again. Some people were offended by your blog post. Do you apologize for them? It's like, yes, for the 19th time. I was talking about how much I don't like my congressperson, how they're pretty much just a tool to, they're another one of these people who basically thinks if they go along and get along, they're going to get into some leadership position really quickly or eventually. And I was really disappointed that this is who my district votes for over and over again. But when I got upset, I went and looked at the different election results from each time they've ran, and it's the same thing. It's a Democrat in a blue district running against basically only ever attracting right wing opposition, Republican after Republican. So that was why it became all the more appealing for me to try to challenge this person. But like I said before, there's other factors than just me as a candidate. You have to, first of all, you have to know how many people are even aware of this, of who their congressperson is, because she doesn't really say anything ever. But secondly, you also have to debate whether people are going to support you in some online capacity. And I don't like the idea of you try to speak to people and you get these little weird interviews where they're asking you all these dumb questions. How do you feel about women now? Some people didn't like a video you put up 2 years ago. Oh well. But if there's anything I've learned from the nonsense with Jank and those blog posts is don't apologize. So if they want me to go and say, "Do you renounce your views on chicks?" I'm gonna say hell no, because I'm not going to. Well, first of all, we're not going to have an election about politics be overridden by some feminist nonsense. But secondly, we're not going to allow comments that were made several years back or currently or whatever to get in the way of addressing any of these issues. I mean, I've made that point before that let's say if I ran, they started talking about the chick stuff. I would just simply ask, is that going to eliminate the homelessness problem in California? State has the largest number of people, and to its credit, it has the most people of any state, but the largest number of homeless people are in this state. Is that going to now be alleviated when I say I'm so sorry for thinking chicks were stupid for not going on a date with me as a collective? Is the fact that over 60% of Americans can't afford $1,000 emergency going to be erased when I apologize? I think that's a good response because these are actual issues that need to be addressed, and they matter much more than one guy being annoyed that he couldn't get a date, which happens every day. People just usually don't make a video about it, but you get the point that it's just so disgusting that whenever you try to, because I've said before, you can draw analogies between political stuff and personal lives and all that stuff, right? But it has to be done in a way that does not seek to be disingenuous. And when you have someone running for office and you want to bring up old blog post and his girlfriend said he did this 2 years ago and he made this video 3 years ago, that stuff has no place being thrown into the midst of an ongoing campaign, which is designed to see who's the best fit for a certain position. I even came forward when Trump, you can go look at this video up if you don't believe me. When that stupid Hollywood Access tape came out about, it was like 2-3 weeks before the election in October of 2016, I kept saying it was stupid to even allow that to be a factor in someone's support for him because it has nothing to do with the issues. Him saying he grabbed some chick by the whatever when I was in second grade has nothing to do with an election. So I continue to renounce those kind of sleazy tactics, and it can be tiring, but at the same time, it's very rewarding when this stuff is overcome. Because that I'm at the very least, him winning that election at least showed that people cared more. And I've said that we're selfish as a collective, which is why when people call me selfish, it's kind of funny that we are going to look out for ourselves above anyone else. And I'm not upset that people do that. So when they came out with these stupid tapes and tried to make it seem as if that was actually going to sink his campaign, or the RNC was going to replace him with Pence, and neither of those things happened, it was great. I smiled on election night because I didn't like Hillary. Who stole the who got the DNC to rig the election for her in their primary, and I just saw it as everybody getting their just desserts. And I could easily talk about the 7 wars the U.S. is still involved in, but those are things I have no reason to believe are going to change under Clinton. I could talk about the continued, economic nonsense that gets used. Oh, we have lowest unemployment ever, which is meant to, I guess, trick people into thinking that people are well off. When, as I said before, literally everyone could be working and you could still have a crappy system like the one we have, where 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck because wages have been stagnant for 40 years. So the prices of things have gone up while wages have remained in the same place. But I have no reason to believe that would have changed under Clinton, because that was there under Obama. Like I said, this isn't the unfair I hate Trump show, the Republicans are devil nonsense channel. This is where reality gets dispensed, and if people don't like it, they can leave. And I thank those who have shown up and attended and come about, but I'm just simply using what I know to be true to justify my positions. But there's a lot of trickery going on that I wish people would find themselves receptive to knowing how to sniff out. Trump was actually able to go around and say, "Oh, we gave the military its first pay raise in 10 years." It's like, yeah, that's true, but it was 2%. And like, we're going to literally get into a game of something is better than nothing, but it still is not enough. It's like, oh, you're upset that he raised the pay for the No, I'm upset that he barely raised it is the issue. And I've got no interest in being a service member. So this is literally me advocating for a group of people who I respect for the most part, to get paid more for giving their lives for a country that is very ungrateful to them as a collective. And again, when I say that, I'm referring to the fact that 27% of the homeless are veterans, rather, former veterans. I meant to say, I guess that would be former active members of the military, but yeah, veterans make up more than a quarter of the homeless. But we care so much about the vets. Told you, it's trickery all around. People trying to fool you at every turn. And some of us can't be swindled on things because we've actually gone out and looked ourselves for information, or I mean, it's just a variety of reasons why people, like a couple of people in particular, don't fall for tricks. I think that if I were to go to each door in my district, you could probably get enough people to at least know that this congressperson isn't that good. Um, but again, I'd have to start with the signature gathering, and it would be a very difficult process, which is why I've molded for as long as I have. Just kind of thought about it, not really gone forward with it. I think there is a genuine chance to get rid of that person if they're given legitimate left wing opposition, and hopefully that can take effect at some point next year. It's just such a shame that we have the broken system that we have. And we have so many people who try to convince someone that it's worth engaging with in certain ways. Like a person applies to 50, 60 applications, right? And they either hear nothing back or they get the thanks but no thanks treatment. And that's considered normal. Man goes up and approaches 100 chicks over a course of several years. He gets told there's something wrong with him and he's ugly, because we all know that every man that's ever been on a date we would all find attractive. I mean, it's like beauty in the eye of the beholder doesn't exist anymore, because there are plenty of chicks that I think are just hideous that I've seen get with people, get with men. I remember one time I was on Facebook and there was this broad that was very overweight, which doesn't make someone ugly necessarily, but it's considered a not positive physical trait. And the guy who was at the wedding, the groom, was skinny. He was very he wasn't like some kind of bodybuilder, but he was nowhere even remotely close to being overweight. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how the hell does that work? I mean, you could look at him and tell he took care of himself, health wise anyway. But that woman, on the other hand, was not. We could not say the same for. It's just a really disillusioning thing. But yeah, I've tried to work in this system. I've tried to just do what I can. I mean, I get out of high school, and then 2 years later, I've got some school asking me for 12 grand, and I to this day can't understand how anyone would expect me to be able to pay for that. But see, if I had paid for that, if I had found uh, enough loans to make that go down even further than it already had gone down from, and then I had the anchor around my leg when I got out of the school with whatever piece of paper I was given, I guarantee you people would say, "Oh, he can't afford anything because he didn't go he spent all his money. He was ridiculous. He didn't know what he was doing with his funds." Yeah, because we don't Americans are not the what's a good term for it? It's almost like by design we refuse to actually have empathy for people. It's like, yeah, sure, we'll donate to St. Jude and all that, but like just as a collective, when we look person to person, we just turn into I'm just gonna say it, dicks. Because we'll look at an individual who's got a degree who can't pay for anything, and we won't say they got screwed over by that system. And even if we ourselves haven't experienced the same thing, uh, there are some of us, like myself, who can empathize with those people despite not being in the same circumstance because we actually have empathy. But you have people who will look at them and say, no, the system isn't screwed up. You're the dummy for going out and getting the loans, even though we're the ones who told you through our own little propaganda that you needed this piece of paper no matter what. I mean, it's like Americans in general are just so short-sighted for no reason. Like I say on this video, we need to decriminalize all drugs. And Kyle from Secular Talk actually made this point for me, which was that we're not saying that because we think people should go around and be able to just do heroin for fun. We're saying it because if someone gets addicted, it can fall under an addiction. They can get treatment for the damn addiction as opposed to getting locked away in prison and jailed for something that a bunch of people experience, which is again addiction. So, you have clowns like the one who commented on that video who's like, I don't know if I agree with that because I don't. It's like, dude, are you even listening? And then with the electoral college, I say on this video, I'm in the middle because I think it might make the smaller states not have that much of a say anymore. But I do lean toward getting rid of it. Again, I know it's not going to happen because we've had for over 200 years, but just as a general position, right? And this person says, if you get rid of the electoral college, California and New York are gonna determine our elections. Trump got 3 million votes in this state in the last presidential election, and you really want to tell me it's just all these bleeding heart liberals that are going to control it? And like they act as though Texas isn't the second largest state. I know they almost voted for O'Rourke, but Texas is a red state. But again, it's not about having and also they act as though every single person in each state vote, which is anything but the case. Again, it's not about having a genuine disagreement based off of some kind of guiding principle. It's simply, well, people who disagree with me tend to live more in that state, so screw you. Even though, like I said, we got millions of people in California voting for Trump and millions in other states. So theoretically, if he actually takes a position as popular, he can overcome the popular vote or get the popular vote, depending on how he campaigns and what his positions are. But again, short sightedness. And I know there are those who will say that this is me basically trying to just say that anyone who doesn't agree with my position is um, stupid. Well, no, that's actually not true. I've said before that I don't agree with the death penalty, but I do understand where people, think that some murderer or some person that has gone out and killed people should be killed themselves. Especially if it's happened to someone in their family. That again, that's my empathy versus my logic of we know for fact that people who've been innocent have been murdered in place of those who've actually committed the crimes, and thus wanting to preserve life that actually hasn't been involved in the same massacres as the ones that are executed for doing something we know they did. Same thing with what's another one? Abortion. I think that people should have the right to access for it, but I understand when people say it's used as a tool of birth control over individuals being too stupid to get a condom. But again, I believe it's too complicated an issue to assume that every person who gets one, or that the majority of people who get one, are doing that. So yeah, it's just really a continuous cycle of people just not thinking that much about stuff, and I kind of, I don't know, it gets annoying because you try to, the thing about a lot of these people is they want to like be heard, but then when you actually have something to say, they kind of like over talk you and just sort of uh want to dominate the conversation. And I said, look, I can, if you want to have a disagreement, you can have it, but I'm not going to sit here and argue because you're not going to change mine. I'm not going to change yours. I can only present what I believe. Let me say hello to Ruben, who decided to show up very, very late. I thought you were one of the people that was watching. I had like, what was it, 4 people or 3 people that were watching. I was wondering who they were. Well, I went on my little tangent about just being sick of stuff. Hey, I want to do a sequel to that excrement employers. I know they are, but I want to do a sequel to that excrement employers video where it's like instead of 28 or whatever, it's like 50 or 60 in a month, just to keep showing how screwed up it is. It's like, hello, douchebags. It's just so difficult to get people to really do much of anything correctly. They just love to sit around and like, I mean, they don't analyze stuff properly. They don't think of it. Just they don't care. This is just the what was it, the era of laziness. But they're not lazy because they don't have a college degree. They're not even lazy because they don't have a probably just they just don't care to really think about things or to. I mean, like you gotta understand with me when I um, got into the political stuff, I basically said I'm just so glad to live in the era that I'm in because I don't have to go to some library or read some hundreds of pages of books to learn something. I can go online and it can be sometimes it's summarized, sometimes it's put somewhere else. It was just nice to have all this stuff at my fingertips, basically. But that same kind of appreciation for what you have isn't something that my peers or my contemporaries seem to also possess. He is the perfect representative. Oh, you mean like Americans mess up everything we do as well? That's why he's the perfect representative. Is that the analogy or the allegory of how people mess up everything they? Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of really frustrating because we have this primary and we try to like talk to people about this stuff, and give positions that are based around fact. And then people will reject the evidence and they'll just kind of be like, well, then what's the point of talking to them? Like I had one Trump supporter when I brought up the 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They refused to believe that. And I basically said, you know, you are not worth my time at all. Like you're not worth me talking to because you have literally devalued yourself, not because you support Trump, not because you're right wing or anything. You're rejecting reality for the purpose of backing a candidate. You know, I just don't have an interest in talking to those people at all. People who would do something like that. We just need to get to a point where people don't feel the need to not think about stuff independently. But again, it seems like it's very unlikely to happen because it's encouraged to just not know stuff. Because I got pushback for being aware of things in the way that I am, but when you have a position that is based in fact, you can kind of defend it. So, for example, I've had people who have tried to like push back against my views on the chick stuff, right? And at some point, they always kind of fold because I'm not saying any of this due to being some woman hater. I have facts backing my position. You know, I can bring up what I've experienced. I've shown screenshots. Um, you know, this is not just some blind hatred for the opposite sex. It's an annoyance with something that they do as a collective that, again, I'll freely admit a couple of them don't do, but it's too small a number to actually give the whole group credit for. It was the same thing with the political stuff. I mean, you know, like I've brought up to some Trump supporters or people that are kind of in the middle on him that, you know, when he talks about being opposed to single payer or that it won't work over here or some just any of that crap, I bring up the fact that, you know, we've literally had that implemented in other countries. And if we're supposed to be the world superpower, why are we so damn weak as to not be able to do something that other countries have done before us? I mean, but again, I'm asking people to just think, you know, just put that stuff together. Forget being part of a party. Just ask yourself, if this has been done somewhere else, and what argument can someone make for why it doesn't work? Like, I actually have a video coming up where I went to the Hills website and I read this guy's editorial, and it made me want to vomit because when he was talking about Sanders, he felt the need to go on the socialism triad where they sit there and whine about that term, and I thought he was maybe going to actually, you know, like because they usually say this costs too much, people are going to eat rats, all that little weird stuff, right? But I thought it was going to at least be a policy based dispute. Again, even if I don't agree with it, but still be something like that. The entire damn article was just him talking about Maduro and about capitalism being so wonderful in the US and the opportunities and you know all this trash that has nothing to do with this man's campaign. Wait, what happened regarding socialism? There's an article that this guy wrote. Let me see if I can find it for you. Where he was trying to refute Sanders by bringing up socialism and all the stuff that it had done supposedly to Venezuela. And I thought the guy was going to actually talk about single payer and you know just like actually state his positions or why they don't work over here. And instead, all he does is just sit there crying about Maduro and gassing up how good capitalism is over socialism, and then mention Sanders at the start of the article, like supposedly to as a dire warning that this will happen to us too. But you don't even tell us what they have in common besides this damn word. I think I need to start writing the hit pieces on Sanders. I could do a better job than this. At least when they mention the heart attack, that's something that actually happened. I know it has nothing to do with policy, but at least when they do the ages stuff, that kind of lands a little bit. Again, it was a routine procedure, so you could be any age when you get that, but you get the idea that that at least has some basis in reality. That person was just writing nonsense, and you have conservative idiots that will sit there and agree with that. That's why I said that it seems as if political stuff now is just kind of a game of who can lie and trick and coerce enough people to believe something that's not true or to believe a disingenuous argument. I don't pay much attention to the other side because they don't offer anything that's actually worth reading. I just want people to actually if they're going to oppose my view, write stuff that actually makes sense. Shouldn't be too hard to do. Like, you guys hate this man so much, you can't even get someone to admit or to rather string together some thoughts that can convince people because it's making a good argument. Yeah. I know Ruben's really scared. Last year, Senator Rick Scott traveled to Israel to go to their waiting wall and pray for Maduro's overthrow. I guess he got his wish, sort of. Ideologically, he got his wish, supposedly. But yeah, I'm glad I did this stream. A lot of things were addressed. I guess I kind of would have preferred the chat had said some more stuff, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching. I'll be doing one tomorrow. See you later.